The crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Silver Creek, Montana, as Stella Hawkins smashed through the second-story window of the Golden Nugget Saloon, glass shattering around her like diamonds catching the afternoon sun. It was 1876, and she'd rather face death from the fall than marry the man who just bought her from her stepfather for $300 and a prize stallion. Stella hit the awning below with a thud that knocked the wind from her lungs. The canvas tore under her weight, slowing her descent enough that when she tumbled onto the boardwalk, she managed to roll and spring to her feet. Her amber hair had come loose from its pins, cascading wildly down her back as she gathered her skirts and ran, ignoring the startled shouts behind her. "Get back here, woman!" Vernon Pike's voice boomed from the broken window. "You're mine now, fair and square." Stella ran faster than she'd ever run before, her corset restricting her breathing as she darted between buildings, heading for the edge of town. She had no plan beyond escape, no destination beyond away. The sound of hoofbeats behind her made her heart drop to her stomach. Pike was coming after her, and on horseback, he'd catch her in minutes. But the rider that thundered past her wasn't Pike. The cowboy on the chestnut mare circled around, bringing his horse to a skidding halt before her. Dust billowed around them both as he leaned down, extending his hand. "Grab on," he called, his voice low and urgent, his Stetson shaded piercing blue eyes in a sun-weathered face. "Who are you?" Stella demanded, even as she reached for his hand. "The man who's going to keep you from getting shot," he replied, hauling her up behind him with surprising strength. "Name's Kieran Grant. Hold tight." Stella had barely wrapped her arms around his waist when the horse leaped forward. She clung to him desperately as they galloped away from town, the wind tearing at her hair and dress. Behind them, she heard more shots and angry yells. Kieran rode hard, guiding his horse off the main trail and into the cover of pine trees that lined the foothills. He didn't slow until they were deep among the trees. The sounds of pursuit faded to nothing. Finally, he brought the horse to a stop beside a small creek. "You all right, madam?" he asked as he helped her down. Stella's legs trembled as she stood on solid ground again. "I think so," she managed, suddenly aware of a stinging pain across her forearm. Looking down, she saw a long cut where glass had sliced through her sleeve during her escape. "You're hurt." Kieran dismounted swiftly, leading his horse to drink from the creek. "Let me see that arm." "It's nothing," Stella insisted, though blood had begun seeping through the fabric. "Glass cuts can fester quick," Kieran said firmly. He untied a bandana from around his neck and dipped it in the creek water. "I won't hurt you, just trying to help." Stella hesitated, then extended her arm. As he gently rolled up her sleeve and began cleaning the cut, she studied him. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was tanned from long days in the sun, but his features were fine, almost aristocratic. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Kieran's hands paused briefly. "I don't much care for men who chase women through streets firing pistols." He wrapped the bandana around her arm, tying it carefully. "Besides, I recognized Pike. He's got a reputation that'd make the devil blush. You know Vernon Pike? Know of him. He's been buying up land all around the territory, forcing folks out if they don't sell willingly." Kieran straightened up. "But that doesn't explain why he was chasing you specifically." Stella's cheeks flushed with anger and shame. "My stepfather sold me to him, like I was a horse or a cow." Kieran's jaw tightened. "That's not right." "No, it's not," Stella agreed, "but it happened all the same. I've been working at the Golden Nugget for 6 months, singing and serving drinks. Pike came in last night and told my stepfather he wanted me. By this morning, they'd struck a deal." She swallowed hard. "I was supposed to marry him this evening." "And instead, you jumped out a window," Kieran said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I didn't see much choice." Stella looked back in the direction they'd come. "But now I don't know what to do. I can't go back to Silver Creek." Kieran considered for a moment. "My ranch is about 10 miles north of here. You'd be safe there while you figure things out. Pike won't come looking, he and I have an understanding. What kind of understanding? A smile ghosted across Kieran's lips. The kind where he knows I'm a better shot. Stella hesitated. She'd just escaped one man who wanted to possess her. Trusting another stranger seemed foolish. But something in Kieran's steady gaze made her believe him. I don't have any other options, do I? You could try making it on your own, Kieran said honestly. But the territory's harsh, especially for a woman alone. Then I accept your offer, Stella said with a sigh, but just until I can find work somewhere else. Kieran nodded. Fair enough. He helped her mount the horse again before swinging up behind her. This time I'll take it slower. As they rode north, the sun began its descent behind the mountains. Stella felt the warmth of Kieran's chest against her back, solid and reassuring. Despite her circumstances, a curious sense of peace settled over her. Can I ask what a man like you is doing in Silver Creek? She asked after they'd ridden in silence for a while. Supplies, Kieran answered. And to hear news. I keep to myself mostly, but a man can't live completely apart from the world. And you have a ranch, the Double G. It was my father's, not the biggest spread, but the land's good. We run about 300 head of cattle. We, me, and a couple of hands. Miguel's been with us since my father started the ranch. Samuel joined up after the war. Good men, both of them. The terrain had changed as they traveled, opening up into rolling grasslands with the mountains rising majestically in the distance. Finally, they crested a hill, and Stella saw a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley below, smoke rising from the chimney of the main house. Home, Kieran said simply. The ranch house was larger than Stella expected, built of solid logs with a wide porch wrapping around the front. A barn and several outbuildings stood nearby, all well maintained. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn, tall and lean with graying black hair. Miguel, Kieran called out as they rode into the yard, we have a guest. Miguel's weathered face registered surprise as he took in Stella's disheveled appearance, but he quickly masked it with a polite nod. Señorita, welcome to Double G. Kieran dismounted and helped Stella down. Miss Hawkins needs a place to stay for a while. Vernon Pike had intentions she didn't share. Understanding dawned in Miguel's eyes. Ah, Pike, he spat on the ground. The devil himself. Is Samuel back yet? Kieran asked. See, in the house preparing dinner. Good. Would you mind taking care of Bella here? Kieran patted his horse's neck. She's had a hard run today. Of course. Miguel took the reins, then nodded respectfully to Stella before leading the horse away. Kieran turned to Stella. Let's get you inside, you must be hungry. The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable. The main room had a large stone fireplace, sturdy furniture, and shelves lined with books. A man with sandy hair and a slight limp was setting a table with 3 places. Samuel, set another plate, Kieran called. This is Miss Stella Hawkins. She'll be staying with us for a while. Samuel looked up, surprised, but recovered quickly. Yes, sir, madam, pleased to meet you. He set another plate on the table. Dinner's almost ready, just a simple stew tonight. Sounds wonderful, Stella said, realizing suddenly how hungry she was. Samuel, is there hot water for a bath? Kieran asked. I can heat some, Samuel replied. Please do. And find something of my mother's for Miss Hawkins to wear. There are trunks in the back room. After Samuel left to prepare the bath, Kieran gestured for Stella to sit. You're safe here, he said quietly. No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do. Stella looked up at him, trying to understand this man who'd risked his life to help a stranger. Why are you doing all this? Kieran seemed uncomfortable with the question. Let's just say I know what it's like to be treated as property. Before Stella could ask what he meant, Samuel returned to show her to a small room where a copper tub had been placed before a fire. Clean clothes were laid out on a bed, and for the first time since her mad dash through the window, Stella felt a sense of hope. The bath was heaven after her ordeal. She scrubbed away the dust and fear, wincing as the hot water stung her cuts. The dress Samuel had provided had belonged to Kieran's mother, a simple blue calico that was a little large but clean and whole. When she emerged, feeling human again, Dinner was waiting. The meal was simple but delicious venison stew, fresh bread, and coffee. Samuel and Miguel treated her with polite deference, and Kieran asked no probing questions. Instead, they spoke of ranch matters, the weather, and news from town. Stella was grateful for the normalcy of it. After dinner, Kieran showed her to a small bedroom. "It was my sister's," he explained, lighting a lamp, "before she married and moved to California." "It's lovely," Stella said, touched by the feminine touches that remained: lace curtains, a patchwork quilt, a small vanity with a mirror. "Get some rest," Kieran said. "We can talk more tomorrow." But sleep eluded Stella. She lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle in the distance, the hoot of an owl, the creak of the house settling. Her mind raced with questions about what would happen next. Pike wouldn't give up easily, and her stepfather would be furious about losing the money and the horse. Dawn was breaking when she finally drifted off, exhausted from her tumultuous day. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, and for a moment, Stella was disoriented. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She dressed quickly in the borrowed clothes and made her way to the kitchen. Samuel was at the stove, flipping flapjacks onto a platter. "Good morning, Miss Hawkins. Hope you slept well." "Eventually," Stella admitted. "Where is everyone?" "Morning chores. They'll be in shortly." "Coffee." Stella accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Mr. Samuel, may I ask how you came to work for Mr. Grant?" Samuel glanced at her, then turned back to his cooking. "Kieran found me half dead after Gettysburg, Confederate bullet in my leg. He was serving as a field medic, though he was barely 18 himself. Saved my life, then offered me a job when the war ended." He shrugged. "Nowhere else to go, so I came west with him." "He was a medic, not a soldier." Kieran's father was a doctor, taught him well, but don't mistake him for soft. He can shoot and ride with the best of them. The door opened, and Kieran entered with Miguel. Both men had clearly been working for hours already. Kieran's face broke into a smile when he saw Stella. "You're up. Good. How's the arm?" "Better, thank you." Breakfast was another comfortable meal with easy conversation and no pressure. Afterward, Kieran invited Stella to walk with him around the ranch. "I need to check the south pasture," he explained. "Thought you might like some fresh air." The day was beautiful, with a clear blue sky and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers. As they walked, Kieran pointed out features of the ranch: the creek that provided water year-round, the meadow where the best grazing was found, the distant mountains where he hunted deer in the fall. "It's beautiful here," Stella said sincerely. "It is," Kieran agreed. "My father had a good eye for land. Samuel told me your father was a doctor." "He came west from Boston to treat miners during the gold rush, met my mother here and decided to stay. But he became a rancher, eventually, said doctoring took too much from a man, wanted something simpler." Kieran's expression grew distant. "He still treated folks when they needed it, taught me what he knew, but his heart was here with the land and the cattle. And your mother died when I was 16, fever." Kieran's voice was matter-of-fact, but Stella sensed the old pain beneath. "My sister Margaret moved to San Francisco 5 years ago, married a banker." They reached a fence line and stopped. Below them stretched a wide pasture where cattle grazed peacefully. "What about you, Stella Hawkins? What's your story?" Stella hesitated. She rarely spoke about her past, but Kieran had earned her trust with his kindness. "My father died when I was 13, mining accident. Mother remarried a year later to Edwin Hawkins, a man who seemed kind at first." She twisted her hands together. "When Mother died of consumption 3 years ago, things changed. Edwin started drinking, gambling. When he couldn't pay his debts, he decided I was an asset to be liquidated. And that's how you ended up at the Golden Nugget." "Yes." Edwin said it was temporary, just until his fortunes improved. "But I think he always intended to sell me to the highest bidder." Stella closed her eyes briefly. "I was a fool to trust him." "No," Kieran said firmly. "The fool was any man who thought he could own another human being." Something in his tone made Stella look at him more closely. You sound like you speak from experience. Kieran was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the distant mountains. My mother was half Cherokee, he finally said. She met my father when he treated her brother for a gunshot wound. They fell in love, married. But there were many who never saw her as anything but property, less than human because of her blood. I'm sorry, Stella said softly. Don't be. She was strong, proud of who she was, taught me to be the same. He turned to face her. Which is why I couldn't ride past when I saw you running yesterday. No one deserves to be treated the way Pike was treating you. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, recognition of shared pain and resilience. For the first time since her mother died, Stella felt truly seen. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Kieran tensed, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip, but it was only Samuel riding fast toward them. Riders coming, Samuel called as he approached. 6 men. Pike's with them? Kieran's expression hardened. Get back to the house, he told Stella. Now, no, she said firmly. I won't hide while you face danger on my account. This isn't about bravery, Stella, it's about strategy. Pike can't take what he can't find. Samuel dismounted. Miguel's already hidden the horses. If they ask, we haven't seen her. Kieran nodded. Go with Samuel, Stella, please. The urgency in his voice convinced her. She followed Samuel back toward the ranch house, glancing over her shoulder to see Kieran striding purposefully toward the approaching riders. Samuel led her not to the house but to the barn. Cellar under the hay storage, he explained, lifting a trapdoor hidden beneath straw. Hurry. The space below was small but clean, with a lantern, some blankets, and shelves of preserved food. Root cellar and hiding place, Samuel said as she climbed down. Civil War taught me the value of having somewhere to disappear to. What about Kieran? Stella asked anxiously. He can handle Pike. Samuel smiled grimly. I've seen him face worse odds. With that, he closed the trapdoor, and Stella heard the sound of hay being scattered over it. She lit the lantern and sat on a blanket, straining to hear what was happening outside. Muffled voices reached her, then the sound of horses moving into the yard. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was tense. One voice rose above the others, Pike's, she was certain. Then Kieran's, calm but firm, more heated words from Pike. Then silence for what seemed an eternity. Finally, the sound of horses leaving, hoofbeats fading into the distance. Still, Stella waited, heart pounding. Had Kieran convinced them to leave, or had something gone wrong? The trapdoor opened and light flooded in. Kieran's face appeared, relief evident in his eyes. They're gone. Stella climbed out, brushing hay from her dress. What happened? Pike demanded. I hand you over. I told him I hadn't seen any woman matching your description. Kieran's mouth quirked in a half-smile. When he called me a liar, I suggested we settle it man to man. You challenged him to a fight. Stella gasped. Seemed the simplest solution. Pike backed down. He's brave enough when chasing unarmed women, less so when facing someone who might shoot back. He'll return with more men, Stella said worriedly. Maybe, but he knows I wasn't bluffing about being willing to kill him. Kieran glanced toward the house. We should get inside. Miguel's preparing lunch. That evening, after the men had finished their chores, they gathered in the main room. Samuel played a harmonica, filling the house with melancholy tunes that reminded Stella of her days singing at the saloon. Without thinking, she began to sing along, her clear soprano voice blending with the instrument. The men fell silent, listening in appreciation. When she finished, Kieran's eyes were filled with admiration. You have a gift, he said softly. It's how I earned my keep at the Golden Nugget, Stella replied. Singing was better than the alternative. Miguel requested another song, and soon they were all enjoying an impromptu concert. For a few hours, the threat of Pike and the uncertainty of her future receded as Stella lost herself in music. Later, as Samuel and Miguel retired to their quarters in the bunkhouse, Kieran lingered in the main room with Stella. A comfortable silence settled between them as he built up the fire against the night's chill. I've been thinking, Stella said at last. I should leave soon. Pike knows I'm connected to you now. I'm putting you all in danger by staying. Where would you go? Kieran asked, his voice carefully neutral. Denver, maybe, or San Francisco, somewhere I could sing professionally. She twisted a lock of hair nervously. I have a little money saved, enough for a train ticket at least. Kieran studied the fire. If that's what you want, I won't stop you. It's not about what I want, Stella said, frustrated. It's about what's necessary. And what do you want, Stella Hawkins? Kieran looked up, his blue eyes intense in the firelight. If necessity wasn't a concern, if Pike didn't exist, what would you choose then? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? She'd spent so long just surviving, just getting through each day, that she'd stopped allowing herself to want anything. I don't know, she admitted. Safety, freedom to make my own choices, maybe somewhere that feels like home. Kieran nodded slowly. All reasonable desires. He hesitated, then added, You know, you'd be safe here, Pike or no Pike. Stella's heart skipped. What are you saying? I'm saying you could stay. Work here if you want. God knows Samuel would appreciate help with the cooking. Or find something else that suits you. The choice would be yours. Kieran's gaze was steady. No obligations, no expectations. Why would you offer that to someone you barely know? Kieran smiled slightly. I know enough. I know you're brave. Jumping through windows proves that. I know you're kind the way you talk to Miguel and Samuel, treating them as equals, not servants. And I know you're strong, surviving what you have. Heat rose to Stella's cheeks at his words. No one had ever seen those qualities in her before. I don't want charity. It's not charity to offer a job to someone capable, it's common sense. Kieran rose from his chair. Think about it, no need to decide tonight. He wished her good night and left her by the fire, thoughts swirling. Could she really stay, build something here? The idea was both terrifying and enticing. The next morning, Stella woke with purpose. If she was going to stay, even temporarily, she needed to be useful. She found Samuel in the kitchen and insisted on helping with breakfast. By the time Kieran and Miguel came in from morning chores, she had fresh biscuits, eggs, and coffee waiting. You didn't have to do this, Kieran said, though pleasure was evident in his expression. I want to earn my keep, Stella replied. And cooking is something I know how to do. Over the next week, Stella fell into the rhythm of ranch life. She took over the cooking, mended clothes, and even helped Miguel in the garden. The work was hard but satisfying, and each night she fell into bed pleasantly exhausted. She and Kieran gradually grew more comfortable with each other. Their conversations deepened as they shared stories of their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Stella found herself looking forward to the evenings when they would sit by the fire after Samuel and Miguel had retired, just talking. It was during one such evening that Kieran broached the subject of Pike again. There's a marshal coming through next week, he said. Friend of my father's, I've sent word about Pike's actions. Forcing a woman into marriage isn't legal, even out here. Will a marshal care? Stella asked skeptically. Men buy and sell women all the time in one way or another. Marshal Davis is a good man, he'll care. Kieran leaned forward. But he'll need your testimony. Are you willing to speak against Pike and your stepfather? Stella considered this. The thought of facing the men who had treated her as property was daunting, but the alternative, living in fear, always looking over her shoulder, was worse. Yes, she said finally. I'll testify. Kieran nodded, relief evident in his face. Good. Until then, we'll keep a careful watch. Pike's not a man to give up easily. He was right. 2 days later, as Stella was hanging laundry in the yard, she spotted dust on the horizon, riders approaching fast. She dropped the wet sheet and ran to the barn where Kieran was repairing a saddle. Riders coming, she said breathlessly. At least 8 of them. Kieran moved quickly, calling for Miguel and Samuel. Get to the house, he told Stella. Stay away from the windows. But this time, Stella stood her ground. No, I won't hide anymore. This is my fight too. Kieran looked like he wanted to argue, but the determination in her eyes stopped him. Stay behind me, he conceded. They positioned themselves on the porch, Kieran and Samuel with rifles, Miguel with a shotgun. Stella stood behind them, a pistol Kieran had given her clutched in her trembling hand. She'd never fired a gun before, but he'd shown her how, just in case. The riders thundered into the yard, Pike at their lead. His face was red with fury as he reined in his horse. "There she is," he shouted, pointing at Stella. "You lied to me, Grant." "She wasn't here when you came before," Kieran replied evenly. "And she's not going with you now. Turn around, Pike. This doesn't have to end badly." "She's my property," Pike snarled. "Paid good money for her." "I belong to no one but myself," Stella called out, stepping forward despite Kieran's warning glance. "And I would rather die than marry you, Vernon Pike." Pike's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful whore, I offered you respectability, a home, you offered a cage," Stella retorted. "And I won't live in one, not for you, not for any man." Pike drew his pistol, but Kieran was faster. His shot knocked the gun from Pike's hand, making the man howl in pain and surprise. "Next one goes between your eyes," Kieran said coldly. "I won't tell you again. Leave." For a tense moment, it seemed Pike might order his men to attack anyway, but as he looked at the determined faces and steady weapons before him, his courage faltered. "This isn't over," he growled, nursing his bloody hand. "No woman's worth dying for." "That's where you're wrong," Kieran said quietly. "Some are worth a lot more." Pike spat on the ground, then wheeled his horse around. His men followed, casting uneasy glances back at the ranch house. They'd come for an easy fight, not a potential massacre. As the riders disappeared in the distance, Stella realized she was shaking. The pistol slipped from her fingers, clattering on the porch floor. Suddenly, Kieran's arms were around her, strong and secure. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe." Stella leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." That night, unable to sleep, Stella slipped outside to sit on the porch. The stars blazed overhead in the clear mountain sky, countless and brilliant. She heard the door open behind her and knew without looking that it was Kieran. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her on the steps. "Too much on my mind," she admitted. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Kieran spoke. "What Pike said today. About no woman being worth dying for. He's a fool." Stella glanced at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "How so?" Kieran turned to face her, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "Because some people, not just women, but certain rare souls, they light up the world around them. Make it worth living in, worth fighting for." He took a deep breath. "The way you do," Stella's heart stuttered. "Kieran." "I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "You've been through hell, and the last thing you need is another man making demands, but I want you to know. I think you're extraordinary, brave and beautiful and strong." "I'm just a saloon singer who jumped through a window," Stella said, overwhelmed by his words. "You're so much more than that." Kieran's hand found hers in the darkness. "And if you decide to stay not out of necessity or fear, but because you want to, I'll spend every day making sure you never regret it." Stella looked down at their joined hands, then up at the man beside her. In just over a week, he'd risked his life for her twice, offered her shelter, treated her with respect no man had shown her since her father died. And somewhere along the way, he'd awakened feelings she'd thought long dead: hope, joy, even the dangerous beginnings of love. "What if I do want to stay?" she asked softly, Kieran's face lit with a smile that took her breath away. "Then I'd be the happiest man in the territory. Even knowing Pike might come back, that there will always be men who think they can own people, especially knowing that," Kieran said firmly. "Because you deserve someone who'll stand beside you against whatever comes, someone who'll keep you safe, keep you." He hesitated, then finished, "loved." The word hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Stella felt tears prick her eyes as the meaning of his words sank in. This wasn't just an offer of protection or employment. It was the beginning of something far more profound. "I think I'd like that," she whispered, leaning toward him. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and answer all at once. When they parted, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "We'll take it slow," he promised. "Do this right." Stella nodded, her heart too full for words. She'd escaped one future by jumping through a window, only to find another, brighter one waiting in the most unexpected place. Marshall Davis arrived 3 days later. After hearing Stella's testimony and examining the cut on her arm, still healing but visible proof of her desperate escape, he promised to investigate both Pike and Edwin Hawkins. "Buying and selling people went out with the war," he said grimly. "I'll make sure they face charges." True to his word, within a month, Edwin Hawkins was arrested for fraud and Pike for attempted kidnapping. Neither would trouble Stella again. As summer turned to fall, Stella's position at the Double G evolved. What had begun as a temporary refuge became home. She transformed the ranch house, adding touches that made it feel lived in and loved. She started a small chicken business, selling eggs to nearby ranches. And on Saturday nights, she sang at the local church, her voice lifting the spirits of hardworking frontier families. Kieran courted her properly, with flowers and picnics and long rides across the ranch. They took their time, building a foundation of trust and respect before passion. By Christmas, when he proposed with his mother's ring beside the glowing hearth, Stella's yes was immediate and certain. They married in the spring, with wildflowers carpeting the meadows and new calves dotting the pastures. Miguel gave her away. Samuel played the wedding march on his harmonica, and the small community that had embraced her watched with approval as she and Kieran spoke their vows beneath a bower of fresh pine boughs. That night, as they stood on the porch of what was now their home, Kieran wrapped his arms around her from behind, both of them gazing up at the stars. "Happy," he murmured against her ear. "More than I ever thought possible," Stella replied, leaning back against him. "When I jumped through that window, I was just running away. I never dreamed I was running toward something so wonderful." Kieran turned her in his arms, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I saw you running and thought you were the bravest woman I'd ever seen." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Now I know you're also the strongest, kindest, and most beautiful. Keep talking like that, Mr. Grant, and I might just keep you," Stella teased, her heart overflowing with love for this man who had rescued her in more ways than one. "That's the plan, Mrs. Grant," he whispered, bending to kiss her under the vast Montana sky, a kiss that promised a lifetime of days filled with work and purpose, and nights filled with tenderness and passion. Stella Hawkins Grant, who had once escaped through a window to save herself, had found not just safety but joy, not just shelter but home, not just a protector but a partner who would, indeed, keep her loved all the days of her life.